William, thank you so much for the opportunity to sit down and chat to you. I've been wanting to talk to you for quite some time now. Healthtech has become a hotbed. It has become a topic of major influence, a topic of that's on everyone's lips, really. And I think in the South African context, even more so, because we're so constrained for resources that if we looked at technology to solve many of these problems, I think we could possibly find the answer. And for somebody who's been in the sector for as long as you have, I'm very excited to have this conversation with you because I think there's actual credence to what you have to say. And you actually have the receipts to back up the talk. So thank you again for sitting down with us at the Vital Insight podcast. And just as an opening question, perhaps, you've been in a rural setting. You've been in the urban setting. You've even been in policy. How have these different experiences impacted you in your health tech journey and where you find yourself today as a healthcare practitioner and as a technologist, building what I believe to be one of the most disruptive healthcare platforms in South Africa at the moment?
Yeah, I guess it's a bit of a life journey. I think if you follow your passion, you kind of go in the direction that you're supposed to go in. So I started off in my whole time in medical school was trying to get into rural areas to do more electives in the Eastern Cape, and that was my mission. I didn't really enjoy medical school itself, but I enjoyed going and meeting the health workers in the periphery. And was determined to go into rural healthcare straight away. So we actually managed to convince the Department of Health in the Eastern Cape to allocate us extra posts at a hospital where there hadn't been doctors for some time. It was Madweleni Hospital, and we worked very hard to try and improve systems there. Rural health is hard. You're often on your own, and things aren't easy. And so went from there to see, can you create an organization that recruits people into rural hospitals?
Oh, wow.
So we started that, but now based in Johannesburg. So now it's based in a rural area, based in urban, sending people to rural areas. And then realized that in order to make that happen, you have to do marketing, a bit like what you guys are doing now. So I got a job at Soul City, which at the time was probably the world's largest mass media behavior change organization. So we had the primetime TV show on SABC1. We had shows on 9 different radio stations. Pamphlets went into all the different print media outlets as well. So I learned a lot about marketing and how to change people's behavior. Also realized then, this is back in 2007, that cell phones were becoming a form of mass media. You could see the rise, and it was faster than the rise of people getting access to water in South Africa. So it really was kind of a crazy route up. But then also realized we weren't quite on top of things yet in South Africa. Well, that's how I felt. So I went off to America at a fellowship at Columbia University, looking at how cell phones can be used for, especially in those days, HIV prevention. To take you back in time, this is the era of SMSing, and
Your Nokia 3310.
yes, SD. And I was eventually hired as the SMS expert because in South Africa we'd been SMSing for years, but in America it was actually a relatively new thing. So I realized that America wasn't always ahead of where we were, but making Americans skinnier and smoke less wasn't my driving passion to improve healthcare in South Africa. So I came back, decided that maybe need to wait a bit for cell phones, got a job in Hillbrow, turning disused buildings into health facilities. And that's where I really saw the policy work. So I was on the National Communication Task Team for HIV and the Male Circumcision Policy Task Team. And you got to see how sometimes information and evidence guides policy, and sometimes it's pure politics, and it's hard to navigate.
Sure.
But then again, wasn't perfectly in tune with my personal drives. And so went to volunteer in Swaziland at the Vula Mobile eye clinic. And I thought I'd left all my past behind. I was just going to do ophthalmology. And the guy in charge said, look, it'll take me 3 months to train you to do cataract surgery, then you can leave and do your own thing. He had never trained anyone before, and I was obviously a very slow learner, so it took me 10 months. But in that time, I got to see how his clinic operated. It was paperless, had a double-sided theater, everything was super efficient, but you still had to drive 4 hours to visit the clinics. And we visited the one clinic, and one of the health workers actually had a carcinoma, like a cancer on her eye, and it must have been there for at least a year.
Wow.
and she could have just sent us a picture. And then driving back to the eye clinic, I realized we can do something about this. I can use the skills that I've had before to make a meaningful change at a systems level. And you think, oh, well, you have an idea, then you do it. And that's pretty easy.
Just go ahead and implement, and how hard could it be?
Exactly. So I had the idea, and then it was about 3 years worth of trying to sell the PowerPoint, trying to convince anyone and everyone, this is such a good idea. No one really believed me. Then we got a bit of funding from the Shuttleworth Foundation. So, and I think it was about 50,000 Rand at the time. So I thought, wow, this is it. I can build anything I like for 50,000 Rand. So I showed my designs to some programmers, and they said, 50,000 Rand is not going to buy a day. Like, you just, sorry guys.
You're not going to get it.
And then I did get lucky eventually after, I don't know how many phone calls. I found one dev company, and they said, look, we know you don't have money, but we'll scope it for you. So when you have the money, we can do something with you. And so suddenly I had like what I needed as a budget. And then another company agreed to give us design time. And so the design time led to us having kind of a loose demo on Android now. BlackBerry was over. And that won the SAB Social Innovation Award, which was R1 million.
Oh, goodness, okay.
And that then enabled us to actually build the system.
And at this point, are you at MVP level? I mean, are you just trying to get this out into market, get some level of adoption?
Exactly. Yeah. And it's not as easy as you think. So we got this funding, we built it, we launched it like in July 2014, and crickets, which wasn't good enough. No one used it. And it took a lot of user testing that I did. I had a bunch of medical students in a room trying to break the system. Eventually, in October 2014, people started to use it. And we've been growing since then. But it was a harsh lesson. It's just because you've got a good idea doesn't mean anyone will believe you. Wow. When you built it doesn't mean that someone's going to use it. But I think all those experiences, like you mentioned, from rural health to doing policy work to work in mobile healthcare, rural clinics, eye care, all kind of added up. And I have to admit, there were many times when I felt very lost on that kind of career path. It made no sense. No one else wanders around like that.
Yeah.
And so I'm glad it kind of eventually formed a direction that I could go in.
Well, then I think that you're probably the best person to ask this question to with regards to, there are a lot of people out there trying to create solutions, whether it be in health tech or whether it be in any other sector. But there are certain things that they need to understand about what makes it stick. And what did you find was the thing that actually got Vula to actually get that initial traction and begin to think, oh, wow, this is actually beginning to stick now. We're actually beginning to see something that people are actually beginning to utilize and that they not only are using, but they enjoy using. What is it that makes that?
Yeah, so I guess a stick maybe is a good word.
Gotta physically hit them in line.
So I think if it solves a problem, people will use it. So if you think about, you use WhatsApp because it's the easiest way to communicate with your friends, family, myself even.
Yeah.
So I think that it's got to be super easy and you just use it and it works. So usability is as important as whatever it's supposed to do. And that did take time for us to get. I think we were also lucky in the very early days. My professor, Prof. Mayer, was incredibly supportive of what I was doing. I think he saw it as more than I could see it.
Sure.
So I still refer to him as kind of the grandfather of Vula, because he enabled me to take 6 months unpaid leave to work on this full time to see if it could mean something. And he also said to the department, we will use the system for at least 3 months so that we can see if it actually works. And once you've got usership, then you can actually see what changes you need to make it even better.
I see there's a lot of people along that journey that you needed alongside you, that believed in you, not only financially, but also just in terms of mentorship and being willing to give you a platform to be able to experiment. You mentioned early user testing. Maybe just talk me through what impact that has had on you and your development through Vula.
I think I've had so much help, but it's also because I think for every 1,000 people I called, one person answered. And if someone answers, they're likely to help you. There's a reason they call back.
Yeah.
So I think I've really been fortunate in that regard, but it has meant a lot of phone calls. I remember there was one junior doctor who said that, he's got this new idea and he's trying to write for fundraising, and no one replied. And I said, well, how many proposals have you written? No, he's done 3. I said, okay, so let's look how many I did my first year, and it was 70.
Yes.
I said, when you done 70, let me know.
Yeah.
So,
people underestimate the amount of volume it takes to actually get something done. Yeah.
Yeah, you get better at proposals over time and fine-tuned, and you apply for the right ones. But at the beginning, it was a shotgun, like just find someone to help.
Yeah. You've mentioned many experiences that you've had that have led up to the concept of Vula and then the eventual implementation. So what was the one moment where you thought to yourself, no, this needs to happen? Was it that lady that you were mentioning earlier with carcinoma? Was it her? Or is it an accumulation rather of a lot of events that have occurred that have led to you saying, no, this needs to be something that I'm going to put my life's work into essentially and see it through fruition? Yeah.
Yeah, I think as a baseline, it was definitely an accumulation, but there have been a couple of kind of shocking moments where I've thought, if I don't do something, I don't know who else will do it.
Sure.
And I think the one, we were talking about eye care earlier privately, and there was when I worked at Madrileni, you're a rural doctor, the only 3 of you, everyone knows who you are, and you sort of know where most people are from because you're part of the community. And a gentleman had come with an eye condition in 2004. I didn't know what it was. I wrote a carefully worded letter, and I said, please go to Mthatha. It's an urgent referral. You can go to the ophthalmologist, and he'll be able to help you. And I thought I'd done my job. And then 7 years later, I went back as an ophthalmologist, and he came. He was so excited to see me again. He came with the same letter that I'd written 7 years ago. And people often talk about medical records. The best medical records I've seen are paper-based medical records in the Eastern Cape. It's almost like your passport. People don't lose their passport.
Yes.
It was, they carry a little waterproof pack, and that's where the medical records go. And he was so excited to see me, and he showed me this letter. And looking at it as a specialist, it was herpetic keratitis, relatively simple condition, just needed acyclovir, which is a medication you can take orally or with drops. And we even had acyclovir in the hospital the first time I'd seen him. I just didn't know that was the treatment. I didn't know what the condition was. So I think that was one of those moments where I thought, I failed this guy because I couldn't get specialist advice, and I didn't know as a junior doctor, even though I was a very keen junior doctor. So I think that hit me pretty hard. And I decided that if I don't do anything, then this problem's going to carry on for years. So,
You mentioned about this patient. I think it's stories like that ultimately drive meaning. And when we think about what it is we apply ourselves to every single day, it's those kind of stories that drive that meaning and then ultimately drive innovation. Vula itself has now been able to oversee and curate thousands of referrals. I think you had over 2 million referrals fairly recently.
Yeah, I think 2.3 million.
2.3 million.
Yeah.
And if I just think about the level of efficiency that has now introduced into the healthcare system, I can't help but applaud the mission that you guys have been able to achieve and are still achieving up to this point. So with that being said, I mean, the levels of efficiency that you now have and that you've been able to achieve, I'm sure there are things that also didn't go according to plan. Maybe just speak to us a little bit about what those things have been, where maybe you planned for Vula to do a particular thing, but you then went down this road and you realized, actually, we need to pivot and go in this direction. Maybe just 1 or 2 examples of that.
1 or 2. So I think you're always making mistakes and constantly trying to learn and get better.
Yeah.
So I think even going back to when I was first making my PowerPoints about Vula, trying to sell them for 3 years, like I still have them. Sure. And it's funny to look at them because they're so technical. The graphics are terrible. The slides are terrible. Like, it's like, I wouldn't invest in more than 5 minutes on that. So I think, like, just looking back at, like, the quality of your proposals and marketing is so important to get any idea to be bought.
Yeah.
And I think also when we first launched and then no one used it, it was heartbreaking for me. But you have to carry on. And then there was a big funder that I applied to, and I was totally convinced we had won this one. This would have set Vula up for like a couple of years. And we got to the last 3, and then 2 people got the award, and I didn't get the award. And I was so bleak. And then my wife said to me, like, what did you actually do? And I said, well, I filled in this form, you know, and you filled in a form, fill in another one. So I think sometimes you have to get over yourself and just carry on. And I think even on technology-wise, initially we thought people would refer by specialty, like you choose, I want an ophthalmologist, then I would tell you where the nearest one was.
Yes.
But actually people refer by hospital, like I want to refer to Tygerberg, who's available there.
Okay.
So you have to kind of switch, you know, around. And sometimes we've made tough decisions that worked out. So I think about 2018, we realized that Huawei was becoming a thing, even back then. They didn't have an app store yet, but we knew they probably would. So we migrated from having what they call native apps, which is Android and iOS, which means you have two different teams or two different developers, to working on a cross-platform language, which could work on any phone, anywhere, anytime in theory. And it was a gamble, and it did pay off because we were then ready for when Huawei came through.
Yeah.
But it could have been a mistake easily.
And they're a big player now in South Africa. I mean,
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So of course we know which phones people use. So about a third of South African health workers are on Huawei phones now.
That's insane. Wow. It's when you're so resource constrained, I mean, these decisions become make or break. I mean, when you're trying to get something off the ground and you're trying to get something moving, these are not easy decisions that one has to make. I mean, and as you mentioned now, you're constantly having to choose between different paths that you essentially have to be a futurist in trying to figure out where's the next step, where's healthcare going, where's technology going in South Africa, and build according to that. And again, I mean, the stories you mentioned here are sobering because it shows the reality of trying to build something that is meaningful, that's actually going to be used by the end user, and that is sitting on a platform that they can actually access. I mean, I can't imagine the levels of constraint that and just stress that brings to you as a person. I want to dive and segue just a little bit into, you mentioned, was it your wife who said to you, fill out another form? We don't often dive into the entrepreneurial side of healthcare, but I want to dive just a little bit into it with you. And you mentioned that we've spoken a little bit about the people that are around you, but maybe we can just speak to the importance of having people around you that believe in you and believe in what you're doing, because I know that there's a healthcare founder out there today that is thinking to themselves that they're building something that they truly believe in. Nobody sees that vision yet, but the people around them understand. They've seen enough use cases where he's actually making a meaningful difference in people's lives. What does it mean to have those people around you and to make and to have that support that allows you to be able to achieve what you've been able to achieve to date?
Yeah, I'll give you an example that I think is bigger than me. We were in a part of a Stanford course in 2023, and there was about 100 African CEOs from all different countries, different sectors, and we all had a big session in Kenya. We'd never met each other before, and the first lecture was all kind of the soft skills around business. It was absolutely phenomenal. Lecturers from Stanford came out and ran this whole ran the program, and they got us all to stand in a circle and with a piece of paper and a pen, and in one word describe how you feel about your business right now. And then eventually we'll turn the pieces of paper around, and I think 90% of us had written alone.
Wow.
So I think that if you are a founder, this is normal, unfortunately. But the good thing is that there's actually a lot of people out there with the same kind of attitude as you.
Yeah.
And there is support out there. Just reach out. So, for example, I make time on Tuesday afternoons for people to come and see me, and if they want to get advice or run their idea past me or anything like that. I can't do it the whole time, but there's a time slot on Tuesday afternoons where that's available. And
so you heard it now. If you want to reach out to William, Tuesday's the day to do it. So.
No, exactly. I think so many people have helped me along the way, and eventually you find some gems. You know, like there's one of our investors is the DRK Foundation from the US or Silicon Valley, and they gave me a mentor whose job was over 3 years to help me succeed.
Fantastic.
And he's got so many life lessons. And the one thing you talk about, like, how do you deal with 3 year constraints and you only have to do certain things? And one of his mantras was that you won't die of starvation, you'll die of indigestion.
Wow.
Because you'll try and do everything because you think that something might lead to everything. But actually, if you focus, it's a whole lot better to do one thing at a time.
Yeah.
And like even now, in a relatively small team, we have to make hard decisions. Which product version do we build next?
Yeah.
Which piece of marketing do we do next? Which will have the biggest impact? Which decision we will look back in 10 years' time and say that was a good decision? And that's not always obvious, but you have to make calls.
Yeah.
I think doing one thing at a time and focusing on one thing at a time helps.
Yeah. And I don't envy you in the healthcare space either, because it's one of the most slowest moving industries when it comes to technology. And it's oftentimes seen as a nice to have. It's not seen as something that's integral. And one can understand why. I actually had a conversation, I think it was on our first podcast with Dr. Machaba, about the adoption of technology into everyday medical practice. And even she was saying that because there's so many things that we have to consider with regards to ethics, with regards to compliance, that adopting technology in healthcare is not as simple as just, you picking up an app and utilizing it. One has got to be very careful to make sure all the checks and balances are there. But how do we shift that narrative in a world where we now have AI and something new is coming out every 2 weeks? I'm inundated with messages of people saying, how do we apply this and how do we apply that? Because they see me as somebody who understands technology quite well, but I can't even keep up with all the revolutionary changes we're seeing right now. But I think at some point we have to get healthcare to move to a level where there is comfort with regards to technology and how rapidly it's changing. How do we get healthcare to do that? What are some of the things that you've had to maybe endure, or some of the conversations you've had to have this adoption take place, specifically when it comes to Vula?
So my mantra in that regard is don't give, take away. By that I mean don't give people extra technology, tools to use, forms to fill in, or procedures to do. Give them something that takes away the admin, or takes away their note-taking, takes away the time it takes to do a particular function. Then you're onto a winner. So I think if you take Vula, for example, it does take away the time of having to spend 45 minutes on the phone trying to get hold of a specialist at a tertiary hospital. That doesn't exist anymore.
Would you say it's a primary pain that you're solving?
So yeah, when I was working as a specialist, we're seeing patients, teaching students, patients are queuing up, and this phone just rings. You can't do everything. So the phone gets missed. So they have to phone again and again and again. And I think that's kind of the reality of some situations there. And sometimes people just take the phone off the hook because it just can't work with that noise. So of course then the people can't get hold of a specialist. So, and then as a specialist, if you phone me and say, I've got a patient with a sore eye, it's like, what's the vision? Is there medical history? Like, can't spend enough time. You can't go back and look at the patient. Like, it's going to take too long. Yeah. So now on Vula as a specialist, all the information is there, and it's specific to whether you're a cardiologist or with an ECG or orthopedic surgeon with an X-ray or ophthalmology with a vision test that's built into the app. So suddenly the specialist got less time to spend having to analyze what the problem is and to reply quickly.
It's that simplicity, I think, where technology really finds its beauty.
Yeah.
We can make things much more simple, and we can ensure that people get to the essence of what the care is supposed to be.
No, exactly. Yeah. And technology can make things slower. So my favorite analogy is www is slower to say than World Wide Web.
Yes, yeah.
So your technology has made your verbal thing slower. It's fewer syllables. So I think that, if you take the example of that TB AI that we were working on back in 2019, we thought we were very clever, and it showed which areas of the lung were possibly had pathology, and a percentage chance of TB, and we thought this was brilliant. Yeah. Like 30% chance of TB or 80% chance of TB. Isn't that so useful?
Yeah.
But no one gives a third of a tablet to a patient, or say, only complete half of your course of medication. That's not a thing. Treatment is binary. And I think we realized this tool that we had built was actually wasting people's time, not taking anything away. Yeah. And so, it was and I think with healthcare, it's harsh. It's like there's a very thin window of success. And to get through that, you've got to produce something that really is helpful, not something that's just being another thing that you have to do for a patient.
Do you think there's a fear or barrier because of compliance issues? Do you think that people feel that they don't want to adopt, like as a clinician, I don't want to adopt this technology because I'm afraid that, there's going to be a POPI violation or some kind of, ethical violation with me sharing data like this. Are there any barriers like that to be able to overcome?
I would say there should be, but if you speak to virtually any doctor in South Africa that isn't on Vula, they'll be using WhatsApp. So actually, they're going usability over ethics. And until there's something that's better, what option do they have? Because they are providing better care because they're now getting advice from someone.
And they would probably argue that the ethical duty to serve the patient is higher than the ethical duty or possible ethical violations they could have talking about WhatsApp.
Exactly. Yeah. And I think it's Sweden, I think it's their policy that if you do not use technology to help the patient, you will be sued.
Wow.
So it's a different look on the thing. We've gone sort of politically we're defensive, but actually we've got a chance to be incredibly progressive, I think.
Yes.
I think if the government said, if you're not using everything you can do to help that patient, then that's a problem for you.
Yeah.
That's what I think we should be doing.
I agree. Where do you think we could be in 10 years' time? If we actually took that progressive step, if we actually decided that, we actually are going to put our energies into creating a more sustainable, more efficient, more workable South African healthcare system, where do you think we could be in 10 years? Now, I don't mean to put you on the spot to make you a futurist, but
I think that we work from the ground up. So I think that's where we look. And if you think about the gentleman who went blind because I didn't know what to do as a junior doctor, imagine if every single rural clinic or health worker had access to specialist advice, maybe specialist tools in their pocket. And suddenly specialist healthcare is everywhere. And I think that's going to be an absolute ground changer. There'll still be surgeons. And so who and how do you get access to those surgeons? How can you optimize the time they spend in the theater? And I think that's where the public and private have opportunity to work together, because there are some private theaters that are more efficient than public. There are also some public that are incredibly efficient, like the one I used to work in Port Elizabeth and in Swaziland. They are more efficient than I've seen other operating theaters. But there they pushed the limits with double-sided theaters, nurses giving the anesthetic rather than doctors to speed things up. So I think that we do have a lot to learn. Yeah.
I want to touch on an elephant in the room when it comes to Vula. Vula has made its name on public referral optimization. But what people don't really know too much of is the application within the private sector. I, as a private practitioner back in the day, used Vula myself and found a multitude of applications for it. Maybe just speak to how Vula is currently being used in private or public-private partnerships. So maybe give 1 or 2 case studies of that.
Yeah, it's not something we looked at initially. We just said a health worker is a health worker. It doesn't matter who you are.
Yeah.
And like you said, initially we set out to solve a public health problem. But now there are many hospitals that receive more referrals from private than from public. So Kruger down the road from where we are now, even Livingston in the Eastern Cape, Albert Lutuli in KZN. So now you're actually getting a huge collaboration between public and private organically from the ground up. So I think about half of Mediclinic hospitals have Vula users inside them.
Wow.
The managers won't know this, but the health workers are communicating to solve the problems for their patients. And we have seen some really great examples. So just to show you a couple of my favorite ones, there was a GP who saw a patient who had an abscess and needed surgery, used Vula to contact a specialist on call, in this case at Livingston Hospital. The surgeon said, look, it's a minor condition, there's a long queue here, he's just not going to get treatment quickly. I'll teach you how to do the procedure via Vula. Taught him how to do it, and eventually had the operation in private. Fantastic. And went home. So I think that's a nice example of them working together. Another one was a patient with organophosphate poisoning at a Life hospital.
Organophosphate, that's fertilizer. Right?
Yes, yeah. And so I can't remember if he had been poisoned or if he had taken the fertilizer, but anyway, he was in a very bad medical condition. But at a private hospital, because that was the closest one to him that his family took him to, but he didn't have medical aid. So now the 2 doctors in the Life hospital communicated on Vula with 2 doctors at Livingston Hospital, And eventually they managed the patient, and eventually there were no beds at Livingston for a while. But as soon as a bed became available, the patient was transferred. But there was a continuity of care,
Fantastic.
private and public. So I think on the ground, there's so much collaboration. Often sort of people simplistically say we have a public and a private system and never the twain shall meet. But actually, there's a lot of collaboration that happens between the two. And I guess that's what we see on Vula.
Yeah.
And it's nice to see the private hospitals coming on board now to receive patients on Vula as well.
Fantastic.
So that's been a very exciting update for us.
I'm so blown away by the way that healthcare professionals make plans, despite the systems that restrain them. Like, despite the fact that there are these funding issues and these issues with regards to resources, transportation of patients. Like, South Africans make a plan, and medical professionals who are South Africans make a plan. And I think these applications obviously go beyond just the borders of South Africa. You guys have now presence in multiple countries across the world, I think, eh?
Yeah, we've got there's a mental health project in Nigeria using Vula. Mm-hmm. We actually had more funding from Nigeria last year than South Africa.
It's fantastic. I hope that South Africa catches up.
Yeah, maybe. And what else did we have? Zambia for non-communicable diseases, mm-hmm. and oncology, which is cancer. We've had a project in the northern part of Ethiopia for obstetrics.
Fantastic.
So we're slowly getting out there. Lesotho and Swaziland are using Vula. So yeah, we're getting there too.
And I heard through the grapevine that you've recently won an award.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, like, these things are, like, you just work, and then I don't know, obviously you got noticed somewhere, or I think maybe it was because during COVID, we really worked well with the private sector and the public sector together. We had 60 volunteer general practitioners from private. Servicing the country's largest helpline for COVID, and we were kind of the technology behind the system. Mm. And because you collected all the information, every week we'd feed the information to Carte Blanche, who would create a series of podcasts answering those questions. Mm. So as the pandemic evolved, people had different questions that were coming up.
Yes.
How to make a mask? Should you clean your kitchen? Remember all those questions we had at the time? Like
some wonderful, some weird. Yeah.
How to cough into your elbow?
Yes.
Yes. So
it's fantastic to see what you guys have been able to achieve. But as a parting question, I just want to find out from you, what you've done is not easy. It's hard most days. I would probably venture a guess that it's harder more days than when it's easy. As anything that is meaningful and worthwhile doing is. What keeps you going? What is the fuel in the engine that keeps you pushing on day after day?
I get asked that question quite a bit, and the way I answer it sometimes is that when I was an intern, and one of those doctors that totally inspired me was the registrar on call, and he was doing all this amazing work with wind-up medical equipment that didn't require batteries and all these other things. And I said to him, kind of like, why are you doing this? And he looked a bit sort of confused. It seems like the right thing to do. And I think there's an element of, this feels right to me. I feel this is my mission. And I'm just make it happen. And we've got a great team. It's not just me. And I think that's a very special place to be. But like you said, it's been hard. I think in 2018, we had to move out of our flat. My wife and I, every month we'd buy a box of eggs. And you live like that. We sold one of the cars to pay the rent. Yeah. And this made no sense. I'm a specialist ophthalmologist. My father's like,
what are you doing?
What's the problem? Like, just go and get some money.
Yeah.
But if I didn't do this, then it wouldn't be here today. So I think that there are hard times, and there are some startups and founders that come to me like I was, sort of in tears, and like, how do I actually get through this? Mm. And I think if you do ask for support, we're all here to give it. Yeah.
Well, now we know that there are over 2 million lives that can be very thankful that Vula exists, and your work is exceptionally meaningful. And I just want to say, from somebody who had heard about you now well over 7 years ago and has utilized your application, seen its impact, and I certainly hope it continues, and that people in healthcare space take note and utilize the application and the service to the best of its ability, both public and private. And I want to say thank you for coming on to Vital Insight Podcast. Really do appreciate it. Your insights have been incredibly valuable.
Thank you so much.
Well, there you have it. That's another episode in the bag for the Vital Insight Podcast. I want to thank William for coming on and speaking to us through his journey into health tech and some of the challenges and some of the triumphs he's had in the sector and in the system. It's not always easy building something that no one believes in and starting from scratch and then building that out into something that's usable, particularly in the healthcare sector. And so I do want to thank him for his insights. And if you are a health tech founder and you're looking for inspiration, I think this is a good place for you to start. I certainly hope that you've enjoyed it. If you have any suggestions or things we could have asked or ways we could improve the podcast, we're always open to that. Be sure to leave us a like and a subscribe on this video. And we'll be sure to create content just like this to keep informing you within the healthcare sector on how we can improve the system and make it better for everybody. Thank you so much for your time. And until next time, see you later.